Good morning, Adrian Sacco. How are you today? Are you there?
Hello.
Hey, Vernon,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm tired of waiting for you.
I'm tired of waiting for you too. Well, they had to get through all the news and the this and that on the show, which they do in the morning. Um, First of all, thank you very much for indulging me and talking to me about your experiences. Every time we have talked, you mentioned something about your experience with World War II and what you did and everything. I've just been fascinated by everything that's happening. And I tell my friends who work in nursing homes and assisted living, I said, we ought to tap into these seniors and find out what they did during the war because you are a wealth of information. People need to know. When we finish and we find out what you've done, it's an amazing thing. And it wasn't just combat, it was the backup services that you provided. So let me take you through the whole thing. I know that you were born in Binghamton, New York. That's correct.
That's correct.
And you went to Binghamton High School.
Yeah, at that time, there were two high schools. When I went to high school there was only one in the town. Now they have two.
And you ventured way far away to go to college from Binghamton, right?
To Syracuse.
A couple of, what's it, about an hour drive? Maybe.
40 miles probably.
Yeah. Well, now they have that beautiful new highway. I'm sure you were doing back roads at the time. They didn't build that extension by that time. Same with us when we went to Rochester. They built 390. We didn't have 390. We had to take all the back roads to drive in.
Well, there's another main highway that they built since I lived there. I don't know where it goes to, but it goes to probably Johnson City or Endicott. That was called the Triple Cities.
Yes, right. And Endicott was famous for shoes, wasn't it?
Well, sort of, because the fellow who did the most for that community had a shoe factory.
Uh-huh.
And so he was a sort of a special guy. And the town, they named the town after him. He built a factory, shoe factory. He took mostly refugees from Europe in as workers.
Oh.
And he gave them medical care. He gave them dental care. He gave them jobs in the factory.
Wow.
He helped them finance their homes. All kinds of things like that. He's a very kindly, his name was George F. Johnson.
Wow.
But he did a tremendous amount of it. So they named Johnson City after him finally.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I'm going to refer to your daughter Adrian as Snowy because a lot of our friends don't know what her real name is. Snowy and I had a friend who had what I called an apple farm up in Red Creek, up by the lake. And
is that the guy who was in your wedding party?
Very good. It was Phil, right.
And he had a pair of socks on with a hole
with holes in them. Yes. Well, those poor farmers.
Yeah.
But the reason I mentioned Phil was he had to hire pickers, and he would get the migrants to come in, and there was always trouble with the migrants because they seemed to be kind of not very energetic about working, and kind of just taking their time and stuff. So Phil hooked up with some Jamaicans, and he flew them over, paid for their airplane, flew them over. He had a couple of buildings they lived in, provided them with their board. And he would have to go out at 5:00 and say, come on, guys, wrap up. And they'd say, wait, boss, let's finish this bin. We want to finish up. They were terrific workers. And Phil spent a lot of time with them. They had that opportunity to come. He paid them very well. And the migrant company was not happy with him bringing in outside people. Well, these are guys who were looking for jobs, and they were looking to work. And he made out very well by bringing these people in because he wasn't satisfied with what was available at the local time. Now, that's been years ago, so I don't know what the migrant population and the pickings are at this point. But Yeah.
The shoe factory, I think when Mr. Johnson died, it probably went to somebody, but I don't think it even is there anymore. But he was very good, not only with the people that worked for him, but the people in the community he lived in. And he was much beloved. They put a new school and they'd name it the George F. Johnson School. Everybody loved him. And half of the people that lived in that community, those two communities, half of them could hardly speak English if they could.
Wow. Well, wasn't the shoe company called the Endicott Johnson Shoe Company?
Right, Endicott Johnson Shoe Company.
Right. Okay.
They had stores all over in Syracuse, Albany. It was a big deal, and he had physicians. He had all kinds of help in there, helping him take care of these people.
Okay, Mom was a homemaker. Did she work outside the home?
My mother?
Yes.
When I went to high school, she went to work. She worked the rest of her life.
Okay.
She didn't. She married when she was 16. She left high school.
Wow.
And she married my father, who was. They met in church. They were great churchgoers, both families at that time. And so they met as young people in church, so they knew each other for a long time. But I'm trying to think how long they were. It doesn't make any difference before they got married. But she was, I think, 18 when she left high school with a year to go to get married to my father.
Now, he was an accountant?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
He went to one of these accountant, they call it a university or college. I don't think it's an accredited thing. I just think it's a school to learn how to do those things, but I don't think it has any educational connotations at all.
Back then, a number of the businesses did that. It was more like a training program rather than.
Well, yeah, but it was you train at home and read books and take exams and stuff like that at home, and then at the end you get a certificate of. It says accounting has a. I'm trying to think of look at the thing that was on the wall, which said that Kenneth G. Gibson is a certified accountant. Didn't say CPA or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but it gave them some kind of a.
So, some kind of a title.
Not exactly a title. It's not a degree.
Right?
I don't think it's even a degree. It's a certificate of competence or something like
right.
that. But they could show that to somebody. He went down. This is very interesting. He went down in Johnson City, in Endicott. IBM was just growing up at that time.
Oh, very good.
And so he went down there and got a job with IBM after he finished the course that he went to school in. Probably was, let's say, a year. And he got a certificate and probably his first job was with IBM.
Neat.
And he was a clerk that paid them on payday at that time. All of IBM. His job, he was just out of school. He went to school for I think 8 months or a year or something to get this certificate. And his job was payroll clerk.
Ah, very good.
And he had to go out in the factory on Saturdays. They paid on Saturday. And he had to pay the people in cash. And he had to give them a piece of paper that said that they had been paid, and they signed it.
Did they give him the like those little manila envelopes with money inside of it?
Yeah, I think so. I think he had to do that as part of his job.
Yeah.
was to take those things and fill them and put the name and the date on them. And then they paid them, you know, they didn't send it to them by the mail or they didn't have them come up. My father went out and just paid them.
Uh-huh.
He got a receipt that they had been paid.
Well,
This was all of IBM.
Well, you know, this is ironic that my first real job, because I had a job since I was 12, my first real job was in a factory that we made railroad cars. We made box cars and coal cars. And the first time I went to get paid, I got in line and there was a cage that, you know, when somebody was done, you went up and you got your money. So it was my turn and I went up to the cage and I said, "Hi, my name is Pat Sacco." And the lady said to me, "I don't care what your name is. What's your number?"
Ah,
So I walked away with that little envelope in my hand thinking, you know what? Someday I'm going to be a name and not just a number. It was not a good thing to do.
too bad you lost that bet.
I'm still a number. Still a number. All right. Okay.
Another thing that they did, of course, IBM grew and grew and grew. And I always wished that I had had some stock in that company
Oh my God.
at that time when my father was working there, because today I wouldn't be sitting here in this crummy little apartment.
Oh, come on. It's gorgeous. Yeah, but you know, all right, you locked out. You missed out on Xerox. You missed out on Colgate or Xerox and Kodak, but you hit the bell with bank stock. I'm not going to go any further.
Well, the bank stock is still good,
I know.
and it's my favorite stock of all time.
We won't.
But
go there.
I only paid that when they came in and said, "Doc, we've got a few shares of stock, and if you want any, we got 10 you can have." And I'd say, "Whatever you have is fine with me." And I did that probably 20 times in my life.
You built up a pretty good portfolio in that one. I know.
Well, it's over 4 figures.
Yeah. All right. Listen, you went way away from school. You went up to Syracuse University, right? Way away from home.
Well, no, my family left me home alone. They all moved out.
Oh.
This was the beginning of World War II.
Did they tell you where they moved?
The old joke, move left no forwarding address, you know.
Right.
No, that didn't happen to me. But I stayed in town in Binghamton, and my buddy from up the street's mother took me in by that time I had a job with my family friend, my grandfather's friend,
Right.
in his business. He gave me a job, and it wasn't any length of a job. I learned how to do some of the work, or they did lineman supplies in World War II.
Ah.
And those things, they climb up the pole with the safety belts and those metal hooks that they hook into the side of the telephone pole to climb it.
Oh yeah.
And he had a very nice shop up in north of Binghamton. And he had been my grandfather when he came to this country with another man. The two of them left their wives in Britain, and they came over here to get a job. One was a paper hanger, and one was my grandfather. My grandfather he lived in the Cotswolds, and his family lived there for generations, still live there, I guess. So we were there to visit some years ago. We went around and visited most of them. And it's a little country town. The Cotswolds are a beautiful country portion of Britain.
Right.
So anyway, family is still around there.
Amazing.
And so my grandfather, when he was a boy, had a job taking the sheep up put them in a pasture at night up on top of a hill.
Mm.
And the farmer hired him to take them up in the morning and bring them back in late afternoon. And so there was a dog on the route that used to chase the cows, and he used to carry some stones in his pocket to throw out the dogs so they would leave the sheep alone.
Ah.
Well, one day, bringing them home, this same dog came out of this area, the home, whatever it was, started chasing the dogs, and he took a stone out of his pocket, and instead of hitting the dog in the rump, he hit it right in the eye.
Ooh.
And he scared him to death. He was a kid. He was like 12, 14 years old.
Oh.
And so he just the dog was howling and yowling, and he got scared and he ran home. Left the sheep up there and ran home.
Oh boy.
When he got home, he was still scared. I forget how old he was, but he was young. I'd say 8 years old.
Mm.
So anyway, he ran away from home.
Oh, geez.
And he called a friend of his who lived in the town too, and he said, I'm going too. So they went to the nearest town, and they lived there, got a part-time job and lived there, the two of them, both married women from the town, and eventually decided that they'd move to the United States, which they did.
Oh, wow.
And they had both, one of them was a paper hanger painter, and he had a little Ford car. They left children and wives in England because they were coming to for a job. And my grandfather had, I think it was a son. The other man had a daughter, something like that. It doesn't make any difference. They both had a child, and so they left their child and came to this country, looked for a job.
Mm.
And I'm not quite sure what part of the country they came in. They ended up in Binghamton.
Huh.
One was, I think he was a blacksmith. Well, it doesn't make any difference. They're all gone now. The man who was a blacksmith himself came over about 10 years later and stayed with my grandfather and grandmother at that time. But they had one of these brownstone units, that they all look the same from the front.
Right.
And so I guess maybe they were routinely not only available, but not too much money. So anyway, this man asked my grandfather if he could do odd jobs for him. So my grandfather said, I'll give you your room and board in my third floor, which these brownstones had 3 4 stories at that time. So anyway, June talking to Snowy.
I hear.
Can you hear?
I hear them. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on to Syracuse.
Syracuse?
You went to school there, right? You started off there.
I worked for Mr. Buckingham, the man with his clubfoot from Britain. My grandfather had given a room. He eventually got married and moved into a house himself, but he found a blacksmith shop, which he bought, and he started up a business. And the World War II came along, and the telephone companies got a lot of Army contracts. So Buckingham and Incorporated got contracts to build lineman supplies.
Hmm.
And Mr. Buckingham called me up and he asked me what I was going to do when I got out of high school. I was a senior in high school. And I said, well, I'd like to go to college, but I said, my parents don't have any money and neither do I, but I'm saving my money now. I said, I've got some money put away. I'm working every week and I'm saving most of it. And I'm hoping when I get enough, I can go to college. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, you go to college, and if you do well and stay in, I'll pay your tuition.
Wow.
So he said, come down and we'll talk about it. He was an older man at that time. He probably was 65, 70 years old. And so I went down to Binghamton and talked to him because I had moved, my family had moved to Syracuse.
Hmm.
My father had a job with the Corps of Engineers up there during the war.
And then if you worked for any military contract kind of company, you were exempt from the draft. Is that right?
Well, I was only, when I graduated from high school, I was only 17, I think. So I didn't have much, I didn't have anything that I knew about very much. So him giving me a job, he said, I'll put you on the line and you can start making lineman supplies, or you can work in any section you want. You pick it out.
Nice. Nice.
So anyway, I did that. And I worked for him for a year. He paid me very nicely. I was working 10 hours a day. And my grandmother had given me her car. And I was living with my boyfriend's family up the street.
Mm.
So I didn't make much of a change. My whole family, the three members of the family, my mother, father, and brother, all moved to Syracuse. And they lived up there, and I stayed there until, because I was making fairly good money for a guy who didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And so I went, finished up there, and when I got enough money for tuition, I think it was, I don't know how much, $1,000. I don't know how much college tuitions were at that time. But at any rate, I went to talk to Mr. Buckingham, told him I was time to go to college, that I had enough of money for my first year's tuition. He said, I'm going to pay your tuition.
Wonderful.
So he said, you do the job at school and I'll take care of the finances.
So you went to Syracuse.
So
Start
I
off
moved to
there.
Syracuse, and my
Right.
family was already living there, and my brother moved in with them and went to Syracuse. And I was there until I went in service, which was about probably 2 or 3 years later.
Okay. Now, did you get drafted or did you volunteer or what?
When I was at Syracuse, I joined ROTC,
Okay. Okay.
and I joined a military fraternity, and part of that was close order drill and map reading and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that
So-
paid dividends for you when you got in the service, didn't it?
Big time.
Because you had the experience, right?
Big time, because I knew close order drill. In fact, my outfit in the Army, they had, I guess this is to keep the guys interested or something, but they would have contests for close order drill and going map reading, all kinds of stuff to keep the guys interested, I guess.
Well, there's a story you tell about the family about when you were looking to go into medical school. There were two lines, and one line was for doctors and the other line was for dentists. And you said you went in the dentist line because the dentist line was smaller.
Not quite smaller. They gave us an aptitude test. The first thing I did was when I got in the Army, of course, in my record showed that I had ROTC, infantry ROTC.
Mm-hmm.
So they made me an acting sergeant the first month I was in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the troops out and marched them, and I took them on close order drill. I took them on hikes and all kinds of stuff that they would learn in basic training,
Right.
because I knew it all. And take the Garand rifle apart and put it back together again, that kind of stuff. So anyway, I had a patch that I wore on my arm that made me an acting sergeant.
Yep. I had one of those too. Yep.
And so I was exempt from.
You were exempt from KP. You were exempt from
Yeah, all
guard
that
duty
stuff.
and all that stuff.
You know,
Right. Where was basic training?
basic training was in Fort Niagara.
Oh, okay.
No, the area that you checked into was Fort Niagara in Niagara Falls.
Okay.
And then we went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Fort Bragg, right?
That was I had my choice because I'd been in ROTC. and you can have the infantry, the field artillery, there are 2 or 3 choices you could have. So I took the artillery. I figured that they don't ride in trucks, they don't walk or have to march a lot. So I said, I've got the artillery. I was good in math. By that time, my major in college had changed about 3 times. So anyway, that's what I did. I acted as a sergeant, didn't have to stand KP, didn't have to stand guard duty, any of those things.
All right, let's jump to the war. You were assigned out of the country.
Well, before that, I was assigned after I finished my time at as an acting sergeant at Fort Bragg. I went up before the review board to go to OCS, and I went in, and here's these 3 young captains sitting at a table, and I walked in and saluted, and they put me at ease, and they said, "You've got a good record." I said, "Thank you." And they said, "What would you like to do in the Army?" And I said, "Well, I haven't made up my mind yet, and nobody's made me an offer." They said, "Well, we're going to make you an offer. Would you like to go to OCS?" And I said, "Tell me what field artillery guys do in the OCS. Where do they go, for example, where do they go for their training, and what kind of work do they do?" They said, "Well, the only place is Fort Sill, Oklahoma. That's the main place for the field artillery." And they said, "If you go there, then on assignment, you probably were going to go out as a forward observer first." And I said, "What does a forward observer do?"
Oh, yeah.
And they said, "Well, they put him out by yon tree behind a rock with a phone.
Yeah, near the
And
enemy.
he watches the shells as they fall on the enemy and tells by telephone, tells the, gun whether they were too far, too short, too high, too low."
Right.
And he said, "But before you have to learn to do that, you have to go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. That's the head of the field artillery.
Gotcha.
And you have to go there and get trained again." I said, "Oh my God." So anyway,
You don't want to do that.
I said, "That doesn't sound like it's such hot work." And they said, "Well, you'd be an officer then." And he said, or maybe he's an enlisted man. I don't know what they were doing right now. But anyway, he said, "It's not so bad." He said, "If you stay behind the rock, don't stick your head out." So anyway, he said, "We have a program that just came in. Maybe you'd be interested in that." And I said, "And what was that?" And he said, "Go back to college." I said, "Count me in." And they did. I went to a center. They had several things they were teaching. At Syracuse University, they were teaching Russian to guys. And I thought, oh boy, if I get sent back to Syracuse, I'd like to learn at home again. But they posted every day the different places where they were sending people. And when I got to my turn, which was about a week later, my neighbors guessed where I was going to go. Ball State Teachers College in Muncie, Indiana. Can you believe that? Ball State Teachers College. The Ball Jar family.
Isn't that where Larry Bird went to school?
I don't think so.
You went to one of those little colleges.
A little college, but I don't think it was Ball State.
Yeah, it was a little college in Indiana. So then, so how did you get guided into dentistry?
Well, with the Ball State, everybody was picking the same thing. There were about 150 of us there. So they decided, or maybe the Army decided for them, that they'd have a military situation there so that everybody was still acting in the military. In other words, you dressed in your Army clothes, you got your same time off, you got your all kinds of stuff. It's like going right back to the troops, except you were going to college.
Mm-hmm.
And they told you what courses you were going to take. It was a pre-engineering course. So I was there probably 2 semesters. And the first week I was there, they called me in, and the guy, this colonel who was part and parcel of helping build this unit, called me in and he said, I can see that you've had ROTC in military things. And I said, yes, I have. He said, well, I'm going to give you another thing to do. He says, you're going to be the acting head of this unit. I'm going to sit at the desk and take care of all the technical things, but the things that are supposed to be done, like close order drill and that kind of stuff, you're going to handle for me. I said, okay, fine. So I did that. So I was the commandant of the cadet corps.
Oh.
One day they sent a physician up from Indianapolis, and he wanted anybody who was interested in going into another field to come and talk to him. So I went. I told him I certainly don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I'm willing to do it while I'm in service. But he said, how would you like to go back to school, to college? And I said, I'd love it. He said, okay, I'll see what I can do for you. So for about 3 months or 4 months, I was head of the cadet corps there. There were about 200 guys. We ran it like a college cadet crew. We had close order drills. We had all kinds of stuff. But all I had to do was report back and forth to this guy because he didn't know what he was doing. And so I stayed there until it came back that they had accepted something like 12 guys to go to the University of Chicago to take either pre-med or pre-dent, their choice. And when I filled out my form, I had to make out my decision whether I wanted to go to medical school or dental school. And this was the last big decision I made. And I wanted to be a right one, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But then I took an aptitude test. They gave us an aptitude test, one for dentistry and one for medical school. And I scored higher on the dental school. And I thought, well, I better take the best I can get. If I'm the best at this, I have no experience at all. I can hardly brush my teeth. But I did, and I put out dentistry, and there were about 6 of us who did, and about 20 of them who put medical school down. They called me in and they said, 15 of you guys were going on to the University of Chicago, and you won't be here any longer. So I was chosen. I always got chosen for these jobs to take some guys to there or do something. When I was retired, I was overseas. I had enough points to come home. They called me in. The colonel called me in, and he said, "I want you to take this group down. There's 6 guys." But he said, "We don't have our orders yet. We won't got our orders till we get down to near Tokyo." She said, "You get these guys together, get them a lunch to take with them, and the train. I'll have the train stopped here to pick them up." He said, "You'll know it because they'll stop and they'll blow their horn, and we could see the railroad tracks from where the school was." So anyway, I said, "Okay." So that's what I did. Got all my stuff and got these guys. There were 8 of us, and we got on the train and went to Chicago. While they're the ones that had us but whether you want to go to medical or dental school. The pre-med and the pre-dent are almost exactly the same.
All the
but
basic
not
courses are
quite.
the same, right? You know, I have to say something, and it breaks my heart to give you a compliment, being that you're my father-in-law. But I want people to know who's listening to this. This is an extremely bright, capable gentleman we're talking about. And the reason he was picked for all these things was because he qualified to be picked. Not everybody who goes in the Army has these opportunities. And you did a wonderful job. But you know what bothers me is you never had training in how to birth a baby in dental school. And yet you delivered a baby
I did,
in
but I
Japan.
delivered it. Technically, I delivered it. And in fact, the baby was named for me. This was over in Japan when I was on.
And what was your title then in the hospital?
I was in charge of the operating room
Thank you.
of this Army unit. I trained all the technicians for operating room technique. In the meantime, I had gone to University of Chicago, finished my pre-med, and the Army disbanded the dental portion of the program because they said they had enough dentists now. Back to the troops.
Mm.
So I had another life in the Army. And I went back to school again. And they made me, they let me keep my staff sergeants, which all the students in ASTP were. Let me keep that.
At your rank.
And in my rank, right? And so then when I, ended up finished my pre-med, all I did when I got discharged was send in my application, and they checked with Chicago and sent me my acceptance.
Well, you went to the University of Buffalo, got your dental degree, and you met your lovely wife. That's another radio story. And you spawned 4 children, Christine, Adrian, Margot, and Jocelyn. And they're all going to be able to listen to this, by the way. I'll send them a link so they can listen to the program.
Every one of them is in the medical business.
True. And, it's amazing, as well as your wife. Who,
as well as my wife, yeah.
Right.
So I had a life in medicine after I got out of medical school, after dental school.
Yeah, but it wasn't an easy life being 1 male and 5 females, was it?
These 5 are good.
Yes, they are.
It took me a long time to find them, get them, to be the kind of persons they are.
Get them settled down, right.
You'd think I could settle down now. It makes me fatigued just to listen to that.
Well, the only problem you had was your father-in-law was a colonel in the Army.
Yeah, but he was overseas a lot of the time. He was a governor of a province in Korea.
Boy, were you lucky, because mine is around all the time. At least you had a break. I don't get a break from you. He was away a lot. You were lucky.
Oh, he was away for months at a time, He was a good old guy.
By the way, you have a birthday coming up in November.
I do. I'll be 105.
No, you won't be 105 yet. No, it's November 11th.
Was I close?
No, not that far away. I remember it's because it's Veterans Day, November the 11th.
That's right.
And in fact, you and your wife and I have an anniversary in October the 15th, which is your wedding day.
Uh-huh.
And why do I know that? Because I met you guys, or you met me, I think it was the other way around, on the day that was your wedding day, or your anniversary.
Oh, really?
Your daughter brought me home to meet you guys. Now, that's another radio program. I'm not going to go into that.
No, I've got a lot more. Syracuse University, dental school. I haven't told you anything about 3 years of dental school.
I know. Well, we can repeat this down the road and get another We can do this Vernon part 2 because we just laid.
God, you better hurry up.
No, you still got a couple of good days left in you.
Okay.
This
Well, that's not the whole story, but that's a basic.
it's a basic, right? It's basic.
But this is a guy who was very, very fortunate. A lot of things worked for me that I never even knew existed. Or if you'd asked me, is this going to be helpful to you? I would have said, God, no, it's not going to help me any. And it did. When I built my first office, or bought my first office, it had been a dental office for 40 years. And this was the second guy retired. And a young guy, just out of the Army, a dentist, bought the practice. Well, he bought the practice, and 3 months later, his uncle up in Utica died. He was a dentist, and left him his office up there.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to sell one or the other, either one. He'd sell either one. So I knew Hamilton, New York, because my parents had friends who had a cottage on Lake Moraine.
Oh, okay.
So I'd seen the town. And I always liked the town. You know, it had a good college town look to it. And the university had a beautiful, campus and sports I liked.
All right, we're talking about Colgate University in Hamilton, right? That's right. And
so
you ended up being the unofficial dentist for the college.
Well, there were 2 other dentists, one about 10 years older than I, who had only practiced there, and he'd been in the Army as a dentist too. So he'd been there a while. And then an older gentleman who practiced like 2 hours a week or something. And so there was no great competition. And this young guy that wanted to go to his uncle's office, wanted to sell the one in Hamilton, which was 30 miles away.
Or like somebody, coming back from New Year's or Christmas Eve services, sitting on your steps, waiting to get the pain taken away, or some college kid coming in from the hockey team with a tooth in his hand, saying, "Doc,
said you're going to have to help me. My father will kill me. My father's a dentist."
You had some very interesting experiences, didn't you?
Well, I wasn't too old when I went into practice. I was probably 25? I don't know. I went on the last class to go through in 3 years. We went all year round.
Right. Wow.
No time off.
No summer school break. Right.
No.
Right. They do that with the physician's assistant program, PA program. A number of those are straight 3-year, no break kind of things.
Well, lots of people that age and at that situation in their life want to get on with it.
Well, there's another nurse in your family. Is your granddaughter, Shannon?
Yes, very successful one.
Well, she's now finishing up her clinicals. I talked to her the other day, had a question for her. And she left her job because they have to get in so many hours before the end of this phase. And the only way she could do it was to quit her job because she's got to do 8 or 10 hour clinicals to finish. And that is the last thing she needs to do to get her ARNP, nurse practitioner program. And she's been at this for a long, long time. She took 4 years to go through the 2-year Indian River program because she was working full time. And then she part-timed it. She did computer learning for her next degree in Northern Florida University. And now she's been finishing this ARNP. And I'll tell you what happened. I got a call from somebody from their hospital that she was working at. And he was a marketer and he wanted to know something about what I was doing and some of the networking I'm doing. And we got to talking. And I said, "What hospital are you with?" And he told me, and I said, I have a niece who works there. And he said, "Who is that?" And I said, "Shannon Shaw." Oh my God, he exploded. Oh, you wouldn't believe how well she's received at the job, and she's so good at what she does, and everybody loves her. And he was going on and on. I thought that's very nice because I didn't solicit that, you know. That's what I called her about. I said, "What did you do to these people? How did you con them into thinking that you were so good?" But you know,
Well, she is good. She's good at what she's done. She's a hard worker.
Yep.
And her mother has turned into a more like her than she used to be.
oh yeah, oh yeah. And Mama's real happy working in North Carolina, Hendersonville, I think.
Oh, it's got to be one of the nicest places in the world.
Yeah, in North Carolina, a beautiful place. And she works for a great doctor. They do nursing home assessments, and she gets things ready for their ARMPs that come in to see the patients and stuff. And she loves her job, and she's super good at it. In fact, she had a couple of positions here in Stewart or in Port St. Lucie prior to going to North Carolina. She was the director of nurses at a assisted living component, and she would, has had other positions of administration as well as nursing. But it's a talented family. It really is, And of course, you have a grandson who is an anesthetist nurse.
Well, he's more than that. You're talking about Jason.
Jason, yeah. But Snowy told me his title. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, he's got a title of some kind. I don't know what it is.
But anyway,
he's doing very well.
He's doing very well, right. He found his niche. He really found.
Although I wouldn't want to be living in Portland right now.
Well, there's certain. It's like what happened, in the movie Casablanca, when the German major was talking to Rick, and the assistant said, "Mr. Blaine, how would you feel when the Germans invade America?" And he looked at him in the eye and he said, There are certain places in New York City I suggest you not invade."
True.
There are certain places in Portland you don't want to go to right now.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. It just looks like a zoo out there.
Well, it's a time in our country where things are happening, and they're going to happen for the worst or they're going to happen for the better.
I hope the better gets going.
Yeah, well, it's about time. I think, they've done their thing. Now let's move on and, look to help each other a little bit more. And the stories that have been coming out of businesses that have been out of business because of the pandemic, starting companies, providing meals, thousands of meals free of charge to people, providing help to people free of charge. People are reaching out and helping their neighbors. And that's what we're all about.
Well, that's what it should be.
Yeah. Well, we haven't revealed your age yet.
Well, please don't.
Well, I'm trying to think. You were born in 1923? Is that about right? What year were you born?
1923.
1923. So if we add it up, it's ding, 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 ding. It's going to be 97 years old in October.
97?
Yes, 97. I know. Yeah. Did you think you would live to be 97?
No, I have no longevity in my family at all.
Well, your wife does. My God, her grandmother was 103, 105. And then
her mother
was 102 or 103. Yeah. And your family hadn't had a lot of longevity, did it?
My family has none.
Yeah. Well, then you come along. And you're there day after day after day.
Must be I have some different kind of blood or something.
No, you're there for me. You're there to haunt me. You haunt me.
I can't believe it. When you say those big numbers, I can't believe that.
Well, when you were talking about didn't know what to do and all these things, there's a great expression that says, life happens while you're making plans.
It goes right by.
Yeah,
as a matter of fact.
And then it goes by so quickly,
all of a sudden.
But you just have to enjoy your day.
Well, I've got a good captain here in the house. She takes good care of me.
Oh, she certainly does.
She left the room about 2 hours ago because she didn't want to listen to all this stuff. She's heard it a million times.
Yeah, they're over in the corner.
Jeffrey had me here one afternoon, and he wanted to know all these things.
Yeah.
I know why these men want to know all these.
Well, my whole point is we see, the number one factor in the state of Florida in income are seniors. Seniors support this state more than any other group. We are a very powerful force in the state of Florida. However, I've said this many times, the older you become, the more invisible you become in society. Oh, there's that old person. Well, that old person has a wealth of information, wealth of experiences. And one of the things I'm trying to do is occasionally get somebody to tell about this wealth of experiences. I'll tell you a quick story. I only have a few minutes left. I was in a nursing home. I was doing admissions. And I would walk down the hall, and there was a little lady who would sit in a wheelchair in her doorway, watching people walk by. And she was invisible. Nobody ever said hello to her. Nobody nodded to her. It's like she wasn't there. So I felt sorry for her, and I went up and introduced myself. And every time I walked by, I said hi. And she would smile there, and now she had somebody to, recognize her as being a person. And I stopped one day and I said, "What did you do when you were younger?" And she said, "Wait a minute." And she wheeled into her room, came out with 2 black and white photos. One was a picture of her laying on her belly, naked on a bearskin rug. Her face was gorgeous, beautiful long hair, beautiful woman. And then she handed me the other one, and she was in a gown, and there were 2 guys, one on each side of her with tuxedos. And she said, the man on the left was my husband, and the man on the right was Walt Disney.
Was who?
Walt Disney.
Oh.
I said, "You knew him?" She said, "Oh, we had 4 dance studios, 2 in New York, 2 in LA. We would hobnob with all those people. We knew everybody." Oh my God, this little old lady sitting in the doorway who was invisible had a wealth of information. Well, I started telling that story to the staff. Now everybody went up and said hello to her. They said, "Let me see the pictures." We made her real. And that's what we need to do. We need to recognize things. Well, Vern, we're all done. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. And it'll be sent out to your daughters so they can listen to it also. How about that?
Bless you, my son-in-law.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. You take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.